I kept it to myself for a long time, but it's time to tell. Emma had always been a woman of mystery. Maybe that's what drew me to her in the first place. The way she carried secrets like delicate glass, never letting them shatter in plain sight. We had been married for 8 years, built a life together that, for the most part, felt sturdy. She was ambitious, driven, the kind of woman who could walk into a room and command attention without saying a word. And I loved her for it. But love makes you blind. It started with small things, things that didn't seem worth questioning at first. A missed call that went unanswered. A message she quickly swiped away when I glanced at her phone. The way she'd suddenly started turning away from me at night. Exhausted from work, she claimed. I wanted to believe it was nothing. Every marriage had its quiet spells, moments where routine dulled the fire. Then came the business trips. Emma's job had always required some travel, but lately, it had become frequent, almost excessive. Meetings in Chicago, conferences in Seattle, late-night flights to places I never knew were on her company's radar. I didn't question it at first. She was good at what she did, after all. Promotions came with sacrifices. But then, one night, a single mistake cracked everything open. I was paying bills online, sorting through our shared bank statements, when I saw it. An airline ticket. Not unusual, except for one thing. The name on the reservation wasn't Emma Sinclair. It was E. Carter. I stared at the screen, my pulse hammering. The flight was booked for last weekend. One of the nights, she had claimed she was in Denver for work. But there were no charges for a hotel. No Uber receipts. Nothing. Just the ticket, paid for in full. Something cold and unfamiliar settled in my stomach. I told myself there had to be a logical explanation. Maybe it was booked under her maiden name. Maybe it was for a colleague. But when I confronted her about it later that evening, she barely flinched. "Oh, that?" she said, flipping through a magazine on the couch. "It was a mistake from the travel agency. They refunded it." "Did they?" I asked, watching her closely. "Because I don't see a refund in the account." Her fingers stilled on the page, just for a second. A blink and you miss it hesitation. Then, she smiled that smile. The one she used when she wanted to end a conversation before it began. "I'll call them tomorrow," she said lightly. "Don't worry about it, Daniel." But I did worry. And that was the moment I knew. Not the moment I had proof. Not the moment I caught her. But the moment I felt it deep in my gut, like a whisper I had been trying to ignore. Emma was lying to me. And I was going to find out why. Doubt is a disease. It starts small, a whisper at the back of your mind. A flicker of suspicion so faint that you almost laugh at yourself for thinking it. But once it takes root, it spreads. It festers. It infects everything. I told myself to let it go. I really did. Emma had never given me a reason to doubt her before. She was sharp, meticulous, and always in control of her life. If she said it was a mistake with the travel agency, who was I to question her? And yet I did. That night, long after Emma had gone to bed, I sat in the darkened living room, staring at the glow of my laptop screen. The airline's website was open in front of me, the booking reference still fresh in my memory. I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. What was I even looking for? I had never been the jealous husband. Never been the guy who checked his wife's phone or asked too many questions. We had always trusted each other. But something about the way she dismissed me earlier, too quick, too easy, made my skin prickle. I clicked through the airline's database, searching for flights under E. Carter. A few keystrokes, a deep breath, and then, my stomach dropped. There it was. A ticket booked under that name. First class. Direct flight. New York City. Not Denver. My pulse roared in my ears as I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. It was there, in black and white. The truth I had been trying to ignore. Emma had lied to me. But why? I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to think rationally. This didn't necessarily mean she was cheating. There could be another explanation. Maybe she had a personal errand. Maybe she was helping a friend. Maybe. My eyes drifted to the confirmation email attached to the ticket. My breath caught. There was a hotel reservation. The Madison Hotel, Manhattan. A suite. My hands clenched into fists. A solo work trip didn't require a suite. I clicked through the details, scanning the check-in date. It was for the same weekend she told me she was in Denver. The same weekend I had spent alone, eating takeout in our quiet house, telling myself I was just being paranoid. My chest tightened. Who was she with? A part of me didn't want to know. A part of me wanted to close the laptop, go upstairs, and pretend everything was fine. That would be easier, wouldn't it? To bury my head in the sand and keep living in the version of our marriage I had always believed in. But I couldn't. The next morning, I watched her. Really watched her. Emma moved through our kitchen with effortless grace, pouring her coffee, scrolling through emails on her phone. She kissed my cheek in passing, the same way she always did, and for a second, I almost believed nothing was wrong. Almost. But then I noticed it. The slight stiffness in her shoulders. The way she kept her phone closer than usual, glancing at it every few minutes. The way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. She was hiding something, and I wasn't going to stop until I found out what it was. I once read that people don't notice lies, they notice inconsistencies. The little gaps in a story, the slight pauses before answering. The way the truth feels effortless, but a lie always has to be maintained. And Emma was maintaining something. After that morning, I paid closer attention. Not in an obvious way. I didn't want to raise suspicion, but in the way you watch a storm forming on the horizon. I noticed the things I used to overlook. The moments that once seemed insignificant. Like how she no longer left her phone face up on the counter. Like how she started turning off her location sharing. The same feature she used to insist we keep on for safety. Like how she suddenly had a new perfume. Subtle, expensive, nothing she'd ever worn for me. I told myself I wasn't jumping to conclusions. That I was gathering evidence, not assuming the worst. But the weight of it all pressed down on me like a vice, tightening with each passing day. Then, the opportunity came. Emma had another business trip. This time, Los Angeles. She packed her bags with practiced efficiency, folding silk blouses and tailored skirts into her suitcase. She moved through the room like a woman with nothing to hide. Cool, composed. But I saw the difference now. I saw how she lingered just a little too long when checking her phone. How she hesitated before answering simple questions. "What's the conference about?" I asked casually, leaning against the doorway. She barely looked up. "Marketing trends for next quarter." I nodded, taking a sip of my coffee. "Who's going with you?" "A few colleagues." I watched her zip up the suitcase, feeling the lies settle into the space between us. I let the silence stretch just long enough for her to notice. "Daniel," she sighed, turning to face me. "You've been acting weird lately." I forced a small laugh, shaking my head. "Weird how?" She studied me for a moment, her gaze searching. "I don't know. Distant. Suspicious, almost. Suspicious. Interesting choice of words." I shrugged. "I guess I just miss you when you're gone so often." That seemed to satisfy her. She softened slightly, stepping closer to press a gentle kiss to my cheek. "It's just work," she murmured. "You know that, right?" I smiled. Lied right back to her. "Of course." An hour later, I watched her leave for the airport. And as soon as her car disappeared down the street, I grabbed my laptop. Because this time, I wasn't waiting in the dark. This time, I was going to follow her. Emma had perfected the art of deception. I realized that now as I sat at my desk, staring at my laptop screen, tracking her every move. She had left for Los Angeles an hour ago, her flight scheduled to land at LAX by early evening. I had her itinerary, at least, the one she had given me, but I no longer believed in the version of events she wanted me to see. I needed to see it for myself. I opened our shared airline rewards account, the one we had used for years to book vacations and family visits. My heart pounded as I scrolled through the recent bookings, searching for her flight. It was there. Los Angeles, 1 passenger. But something nagged at me. I knew Emma well enough to know she covered her tracks. She was smart, too smart to let a digital trail lead directly to the truth. I checked the ticket details again. Then, I noticed something that made my breath catch. The seat assignment. First class. Seat 2A. Emma never flew first class. She had always insisted it was a waste of money, that business class was more than enough if work required travel. But here it was, in black and white. I clicked further, my fingers tense on the mouse. And then, another detail, one that sent a slow, sickening chill down my spine. The seat next to hers, 2B, was also booked under the name E. Carter. The same alias from the New York trip. I sat back, my hands gripping the armrests of my chair. My mind raced. It wasn't just that she was traveling with someone. It was that she was traveling with the same someone, and she had taken deliberate steps to make sure I wouldn't notice. Except now I did. I stared at the screen for what felt like an eternity, the betrayal settling over me like wet cement. The pieces were falling into place too quickly now, one after the other, leaving me no room for denial. Emma wasn't just lying. She was orchestrating an entirely separate life, and I was about to step into it. The plan. I had never done anything like this before. Tracking my wife, following a trail of deception. I barely recognized myself. But what choice did I have? If she was going to lie to me, then I had no reason to play fair. I booked a last-minute ticket on the same flight. Economy class. I didn't need luxury. I needed answers. By the time I arrived at the airport, Emma's flight was already boarding. I moved through security quickly, keeping my head down, acting like I belonged. Boarding group 5. That was me. I let the first-class passengers go first, my eyes scanning the line. And then, I saw her. Emma stood near the gate, her phone in hand, dressed in sleek black pants and a tailored blazer, the kind of effortless elegance she always carried. And next to her, standing too close, was a man. I felt my body go rigid. E. Carter. He was tall, fit, with expensive-looking clothes and the kind of confidence that radiated from men who were used to getting what they wanted. Emma laughed at something he said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, the kind of laugh she used to give me. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. I wasn't here to make a scene. I wasn't here to lose my temper in the middle of an airport. I was here to see the truth with my own eyes. They boarded first. I waited. By the time I got to my seat in economy, my pulse was steady, my breathing even. I wasn't just a betrayed husband anymore. I was a man with a plan. The flight took off smoothly, but my mind was in chaos. From my cramped seat in economy, I stared at the back of the first-class section, imagining them just beyond that curtain. Emma and the man she had lied about. The man who sat next to her like he belonged there. My fists tightened against my thighs. I had spent years believing in our marriage, trusting her, loving her. Now, I was hurtling through the sky at 30,000 feet, watching everything I had built with her crumble into dust. I needed to know more. I flagged down a passing flight attendant, a woman in her early 30s with a professional but kind demeanor. "Excuse me," I said, flashing the most polite smile I could muster. "I'm actually hoping to surprise my wife. She's up in first class, seat 2A. Would it be possible to send a glass of champagne to her?" The attendant's face brightened. "Oh, how sweet. Of course. What's the name?" I swallowed back the bitterness in my throat. "Emma Sinclair." She nodded and jotted it down. "I'll take care of it." I watched her disappear behind the curtain. A few moments later, she returned. The smile on her face wasn't quite the same. If anything, there was a flicker of hesitation, something unreadable in her expression. "She actually already has a drink," she said carefully. "Would you like me to leave her a note instead?" I forced a chuckle. "Already indulging, huh?" I kept my tone light, as if I wasn't unraveling inside. "No worries. I'll just surprise her when we land." The flight attendant nodded and moved along, tending to another passenger. I exhaled slowly. "Already has a drink." That meant E. Carter had ordered it for her. I could picture it too clearly. Him leaning in close, whispering something in her ear. Her laughing at a private joke, touching his arm without thinking. Drinking champagne together, while I sat alone in the back of the plane. I needed more. I needed proof. Keeping my breathing steady, I unbuckled my seatbelt and stood. I wasn't allowed in first class, but I could use the restroom nearby. A perfect excuse. I walked calmly down the aisle, heart hammering in my chest. Then, I saw them. The curtain between sections had been left slightly open. Through the narrow gap, I caught a glimpse of her. Emma was leaning toward him, their heads close. He was saying something, and she was smiling, twirling her wine glass between her fingers, the way she used to do with me. Then, she reached out and touched his hand. Not a friendly touch. Not a casual, meaningless brush. A slow, lingering caress. A lover's touch. Something inside me cracked wide open. I turned away quickly before I could be seen. Before I could storm in there and demand to know who the hell this man was. I stumbled into the restroom, locking the door behind me. My breathing was ragged, my reflection in the mirror barely recognizable. She was cheating. No more doubts. No more benefit of the doubt. This was real. I had spent weeks wondering, second-guessing myself, hoping I was wrong. But there was no room for hope anymore. Emma was having an affair, and I had just watched it happen with my own eyes. I gripped the edge of the sink, my knuckles white. I should have been furious. And I was. But beneath the rage, something colder was taking shape. This wasn't the moment for an explosion. Not here. Not now. This was the moment I decided how the story would end. Not with me as the fool. Not with me as the broken-hearted husband. Emma thought she was in control. That I was still in the dark. That she could sip champagne and touch another man's hand without consequence. She was wrong. I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. I had a plan to make. By the time the plane landed in Los Angeles, my emotions had hardened into something sharp. No more hesitation. No more doubt. I wasn't going to confront Emma. Not yet. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of knowing I had caught her. I was going to be patient. I was going to be careful. I was going to make sure that when I struck, she wouldn't see it coming. As the plane taxied toward the gate, I watched them. Emma and Carter. They sat close, their hands barely touching now, but I had already seen enough. She was good at pretending. She had pretended with me for months. Now, she did it with him, glancing at her phone casually, adjusting her blazer like nothing was out of the ordinary. I clenched my jaw. I would have believed it too, if I hadn't seen the way she touched his hand mid-flight. When the seatbelt sign dinged off, first-class passengers stood to grab their things. They were among the first to leave. I stayed put, waiting for my turn, making sure I wouldn't cross her path in the terminal. I wasn't ready for that yet. Instead, I followed at a distance. Emma and her mystery man walked side by side through LAX, her suitcase rolling effortlessly beside her. She moved with the confidence of someone who thought she had gotten away with it. That infuriated me the most. I needed to know where they were staying. I couldn't hear their conversation over the noise of the terminal, but I didn't need to. I had already installed a tracking app on Emma's phone 2 nights ago. She thought I was being paranoid when I asked to borrow her phone for a quick update. She had no idea I was planting my own insurance policy. I took out my phone, opened the app, and watched the blinking dot on the map. The Ritz-Carlton, downtown LA. I almost laughed. Of course. Not a generic conference hotel. Not the standard corporate booking. She was staying in luxury with him. I hailed a cab, keeping my distance, letting them think their night was unfolding exactly as planned. Letting Emma believe she was still in control. The hotel truth. I arrived at the Ritz-Carlton 20 minutes later. Their Uber had already pulled in. Emma and Carter strolled through the lobby like any other couple, effortless in their deception. I followed behind, careful, invisible. At the front desk, Emma checked in under her real name, while Carter gave a different last name. Not Sinclair. Not Carter. Interesting. The concierge handed over 2 key cards. I memorized the room number. 2105. They took the elevator. I waited. I needed more than just a tracking app. I needed proof that she couldn't talk her way out of. I made my way toward the concierge desk, putting on my best relaxed, wealthy traveler expression. Hey, I said casually to the young man behind the desk. I'm meeting my wife here. She's already checked in. I just need an extra key to our room. She said she forgot to leave one for me. The concierge hesitated. What's the name on the reservation? I smiled. Emma Sinclair. He checked the system. I saw the flicker of confirmation in his eyes. He was about to say no, until I reached into my wallet and slid a crisp $100 bill across the counter. His eyes darted around. Then he nodded. Seconds later, he handed me a keycard. Enjoy your stay, Mr. Sinclair, he murmured. I pocketed the card and walked toward the elevator, my pulse steady. I wasn't going to use it tonight. Not yet. Let Emma have her night. Let her think she was untouchable. I had everything I needed now. Tomorrow, I would walk through that door. And when I did, Emma's perfect little world would come crashing down. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of rage. Rage is easy. It's loud, explosive, reckless. But this wasn't about rage anymore. It was about control. It was about power. It was about taking back what Emma had stolen from me, the truth. I sat in my hotel room, just a few floors below hers, watching the city lights stretch endlessly beyond the glass. Emma was up there right now with him. Maybe wrapped in those soft hotel sheets, maybe whispering to him the way she used to whisper to me. It didn't matter. Because by tomorrow, her world would collapse. I had spent the past week preparing for this moment. I had already backed up our joint finances, secured my personal accounts, and spoken with a divorce lawyer. I wasn't walking into that room to beg for answers. I was walking in to win. The breaking point. Morning came fast. At exactly 7:45 a.m., my phone buzzed. A notification from the tracking app. Emma's phone had just left room 2105. She was alone. My heart pounded, not with panic, but with precision. This was the moment. I grabbed the keycard, slipped it into my pocket, and took the elevator up. With every step toward her room, I felt the weight of our marriage press against me. 8 years. Hundreds of nights spent together. Thousands of promises made. And in a few short seconds, I would see what those promises had meant to her. Nothing. I reached the door, slid the keycard in. A quiet beep. The lock clicked open. I stepped inside. The room of lies. The air smelled like hotel linen and expensive perfume. Emma's suitcase was by the closet, half unpacked. But it wasn't her clothes that caught my attention. It was his. A navy blue suit jacket draped over the armchair. A pair of men's dress shoes kicked off near the bed. A watch on the nightstand, next to Emma's phone charger. I moved further inside, every detail solidifying the truth I already knew. This wasn't a business trip. This was their private little getaway. The sound of water running in the bathroom caught my ear. He was still here. I stared at the closed door. I could hear him moving inside, the faint sound of a razor against his skin. It would be easy. One hard shove. One broken nose. One punch for every lie Emma had ever told me. But that's what a fool would do. And I wasn't a fool anymore. Instead, I walked over to the nightstand, picked up the watch, rolled it between my fingers. Then, calmly, I set it down on Emma's pillow. A final message. I was here. I saw everything. No screaming. No broken furniture. No desperate questions. Just one cold, undeniable fact: she had been caught. I turned and walked out. Tomorrow, I would be gone. The divorce papers would be on their way. The accounts would be locked. And Emma? She would finally know what it felt like to lose. I didn't wait around. By the time Emma emerged from whatever morning routine she shared with him, I was already checked out of the hotel, already on my way back to our house, if I could even call it that anymore. There was nothing left for me in Los Angeles except a broken illusion, and I had no interest in sticking around to watch her scramble for excuses. Let her find the watch. Let her feel the cold shock of knowing I had been there, that I had seen everything. By the time she processed it, I'd be miles ahead. The game was over. She just didn't know it yet. The first call. It came exactly 2 hours later. I was back home, standing in our kitchen, staring at the same counter where Emma and I had shared coffee 100 times. The same kitchen where she had once kissed me goodbye before every business trip. My phone buzzed. I didn't have to look at the screen to know who it was. I let it ring. Once. Twice. Then I answered. Daniel. Her voice was breathless, shaky. For the first time in months, I held the power in this conversation. I was wondering when you'd call, I said, my voice even. A sharp inhale on her end. Where are you? Home, I thought. The place you don't belong anymore. Where do you think? I said instead. Silence. Then, Daniel, please. Let's talk. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. She wanted to talk now? Now that she had been caught? Now that the game wasn't in her favor? I think you already said enough, I replied. You just didn't realize I was listening. Her breath hitched. But I wasn't interested in hearing whatever lie she was about to weave. I know, Emma. My voice was calm. Too calm. I know everything. Another silence. A different kind this time. Not shock, not confusion. Just the slow, dawning realization that she had lost control of the narrative. Daniel. I hope it was worth it. Then I hung up. And for the first time in weeks, I felt free. The second call. She tried again an hour later. And an hour after that. When I didn't answer, she switched to texts. Long paragraphs, desperate apologies, half-baked explanations. I didn't read them. I was done listening. Instead, I opened my laptop, clicked into my email, and sent one final message. To Emma Sinclair. Subject: Your next steps. Emma. I've already contacted my lawyer. You'll be receiving the divorce papers soon. Don't bother calling. There's nothing left to discuss. Daniel. I had sinned. And just like that, Emma became nothing more than a name in my inbox. Emma didn't give up easily. The texts kept coming. Each one a different version of the same pathetic attempt to salvage what was already gone. Emma. Daniel. Please. Just talk to me. It's not what you think. Emma. I made a mistake. I was stupid. But I love you. You have to believe that. Emma. Can you please just meet me? We can fix this. I know we can. Emma. Say something. Anything. I stared at my phone, watching the messages pile up, but I never typed a single word back. Because the truth was, Emma wasn't texting out of love. She was texting out of fear. She wasn't sorry for cheating. She was sorry she got caught. And she wasn't trying to save our marriage. She was trying to save herself. The knock at the door. I had expected the calls. The texts. What I hadn't expected was for her to show up. It was late. The sky had darkened, the street lights casting long shadows across the pavement when I heard the knock. I knew who it was before I even checked the peephole. Emma. Standing on the doorstep, wrapped in her expensive coat, her face pale, eyes rimmed red, the perfect image of a woman in crisis. I let her knock again. Then again. Finally, I opened the door. She let out a breath like she had been holding it in for hours. Daniel. I stepped aside, just enough to let her see the packed boxes stacked in the hallway behind me. Emma froze. Her lips parted slightly, her breath catching. You're leaving, she whispered. I crossed my arms. What did you expect? She blinked rapidly, her hands trembling at her sides. She hadn't expected this. She had expected anger, screaming, a fight, a chance to twist the narrative. But all she got was cold indifference. Daniel, please, she begged, stepping forward, reaching for my arm. I know I messed up, but we can fix this. We've been together too long to throw it all away. I pulled back before she could touch me, the same way she had once pulled back from me when she started pulling closer to him. You already threw it away, Emma, I said quietly. Her breath hitched. It wasn't real. I tilted my head. Oh, so when you touched his hand on the plane, that wasn't real? When you checked into the Ritz with him, that wasn't real? When you spent the night in his bed, that wasn't real? She flinched like I had slapped her. But she had no excuse. We both knew that. She swallowed hard, blinking back tears. I was lost, she whispered. I didn't know what I wanted. But I know now. She stepped closer again. Too close. I want you, Daniel. I never stopped. I let the silence stretch, let her believe, just for a moment, that I might break. Then, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the divorce papers. Her face crumbled. No, she breathed. No, no, no. We can talk about this. I held them out. You don't have a choice, Emma. Her eyes flickered between the papers and my face, as if she was searching for something, a sign of hesitation, a crack in my armor. She wouldn't find one. Her hands trembled as she took the envelope, gripping it like it might burn her fingers. This is really it, she whispered. I exhaled slowly, feeling lighter than I had in months. Yes, I said. This is it. And with that, I stepped back inside and shut the door on Emma Sinclair. For good. I stood behind the door, listening. For a long time, Emma didn't move. I imagined her standing there, clutching the divorce papers in her trembling hands, her mind racing to come up with another excuse, another plea, another way to manipulate the situation. But there was nothing left to say. After what felt like an eternity, I heard it, the sharp, uneven breath, the quiet, choked sob, the sound of realization sinking in. Then, footsteps. Soft at first, then quicker. Running. I waited until I heard the car door slam and the engine roar to life before I let myself exhale. Emma was gone. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free, unraveling the past. The silence in the house was different now. Not empty. Not lonely. Just peaceful. I walked back inside, past the boxes stacked by the door. My escape plan was already in motion. I wasn't just leaving Emma. I was leaving this house. Every wall, every corner, every detail was stained with memories of her. The smell of her perfume still lingered in the bedroom, woven into the sheets. The closet still held clothes she hadn't taken yet, little remnants of a life that no longer existed. I wanted it gone. All of it. I grabbed a box and started throwing things in. Her old sweaters, the perfume bottles, the framed pictures of us that once sat proudly on our shelves. I didn't hesitate. Not anymore. Then, I reached the nightstand. My wedding ring sat there. I had taken it off the night before. I picked it up, rolling the smooth band between my fingers. Once, this ring had meant something. Now, it was just metal. I walked to the trash can, held it over the opening, and let it drop. Her final attempt. That night, I expected more texts, more calls. But my phone was silent. Until 1:37 a.m. A single message. Emma, I guess this is really goodbye. No apologies. No last-minute declarations of love. Just acceptance. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then, I did the only thing left to do. I deleted it and blocked her number. Goodbye, Emma. What comes next? The next morning, I loaded the last box into my car and took one final look at the house. It didn't feel like home anymore. It hadn't in a long time. I pulled out of the driveway, the weight of the past finally lifting from my shoulders. I didn't know exactly where I was going, but for the first time in years, I knew it wouldn't be chasing after someone who had never really chosen me. And that was enough. Driving away felt nothing like I expected. I thought I'd feel anger still burning in my chest. I thought I'd feel hollow, grieving the 8 years I had wasted. But all I felt was relief. A strange, intoxicating kind of freedom. The weight of Emma, of her lies, of the version of myself that had spent months, maybe years, pretending not to see the cracks, was finally gone. I wasn't just leaving her. I was leaving who I had been with her. A new beginning. I checked into a small rental just outside the city, a temporary place while I figured out my next move. It wasn't much, just a furnished one-bedroom with creaky floors and a coffee maker that barely worked. But it was mine. No more waiting for a wife who didn't love me. No more staring at a phone, wondering if she'd call, if she'd lie, if she'd cheat. No more Emma. The first night, I slept better than I had in months. The second night, I opened my laptop and looked at a map. Anywhere was an option now. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't stuck. The last loose end. A week passed. Then 2. Emma didn't reach out again. The divorce papers were filed. She didn't contest anything. No arguments over the house. No drawn-out legal battles. It was as if she knew she had already lost. Then, one morning, an email arrived. From her. Subject: I just need you to know. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't have to open it. I didn't know her anything. But curiosity is a funny thing. I clicked. Daniel, I know I don't deserve for you to read this, but I needed to say it. I don't know what's worse, losing you or realizing how much I took you for granted. I keep replaying that moment at the door. The way you looked at me. The way you didn't yell, didn't fight, didn't ask for an explanation. You just left. And that was worse than if you had hated me. You were always better than me. I was selfish. I got lost in wanting more, in chasing something I thought I was missing. I convinced myself that I deserved it, that I wasn't hurting anyone. But I was. I hurt you. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know. I see it now. I see everything I ruined. I hope one day you find someone who deserves you. I hope she looks at you the way I should have. I'm sorry, Emma. I let out a slow breath, and for a moment, I felt nothing. No anger, no longing, no sadness. Just the quiet confirmation that I had made the right choice. I closed the email and deleted it. Some endings don't come with fireworks or dramatic confrontations. Some endings are just quiet. That's how it was with Emma. I didn't reply to her email. I didn't need to. Her regret wasn't my burden to carry. The day I officially signed the final divorce papers, I walked out of the courthouse and took a deep breath. For the first time in 8 years, I belonged to no one but myself. Moving forward, I left the city a month later, packed up my car, drove until the skyline disappeared in my rearview mirror, and kept going until I felt like I had outrun every ghost Emma left behind. I settled in a new town, a place where nobody knew my name, where I wasn't Daniel, the husband who got cheated on. I was just Daniel. I got a small apartment, started fresh, bought a new coffee maker that actually worked, and every morning, I woke up without the weight of wondering if the woman I loved was lying to me. I didn't check her social media, didn't ask mutual friends about her. Emma Sinclair was a chapter one had closed, locked, and left behind. The unexpected encounter. 6 months later, it happened. I was sitting in a coffee shop, flipping through a book, when I heard her voice. Not Emma's. Someone new. She was at the counter, laughing lightly, talking to the barista about some terrible first date she had been on. Her voice had warmth in it, the kind that made you turn your head. And I did. I didn't know why. Maybe I was just curious. She caught me looking, and she smiled. Not like Emma used to. Not like a woman keeping secrets. Just a real, simple, honest smile. I found myself smiling back. And just like that, I realized something. The past didn't matter anymore. The betrayal, the pain, the sleepless nights, they were behind me now. Because life keeps going. Because new stories begin, even when you don't expect them to. And because sometimes, walking away from the wrong person is the only way you'll ever find the right one. The end. If you like this story, please like and subscribe to the channel.